Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for your patience. I'm trying to stream this on Rumble at the same time, and Rumble, I must admit, is it never half the time it doesn't work. I put in all their code things, and I don't know. I don't know what they're doing over there. So I have no idea. I think we're on Rumble, but I don't think we are. I did everything I'm supposed to do, but we're definitely on YouTube and Rockfin. And thank you for watching us on those platforms. And Rumble, isn't paying me nickels, so my patience with them is so yeah. We'll keep the Rumble experiment going, but I don't know what I don't know what. Anyway, Government Secrets, if you see below, has a Patreon, folks. Check that out. You can get a delightful Government Secrets mug. Look at that. Oh, it's amazing. It just smells and drink. It makes the lies of the United States government taste a little better. That tastes good. Yeah. Put like a Diet Coke in there and then tell yourself it's not bad for you. And that's the United States. The United States is one big Diet Coke. All right, I'm going to take that off the screen. Hit the like button. And we want a Government Secrets OnlyFans. Well, Lee and I are going to talk about that. We might start doing a Government Secrets OnlyFans. Lee and I, we've been talking about that, what we can do, different sex toys and oils. We're going to work that. There's going to be different tiers. We'll figure that out. We're just figuring out OnlyFans soon enough. What to charge for various sex acts. It's going to take some time, but we will have a Government Secrets OnlyFans. I'm workshopping it just by having my chest hair open like this, kind of Burt Reynolds 1978, like Smoking the Bandit, like between Longest Yard and Smoking the Bandit. That's my Burt Reynolds, like definitely after Gator, but like, all right, nobody knows any of these. I'm making myself sound old. All right, folks, go to Rockfin. We're watching there. Support our show in many various ways. Let's bring him on. One of the most censored comics in all of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, and get ready for the Government Secrets OnlyFans account, Lee Camp.
Hey, man!
What's up?
I put away my chest hair just for you today.
Lee, don't hide it, man. Let it out there. Let the people see it. They need it.
So I got two notes for you. One we can talk about later. The Rumble thing, I did find out you got to put in a new stream key every time.
That's what I've been doing, dude.
Really?
I swear to God, I've done this. I did this last night for my Political Vigilante live stream. I went there and it goes click live stream. And then I copy and paste the RMTP and the key codes. I do that fresh every single time.
That's weird. I've never had a problem after I do it. Anyway, so yeah, then that's fucked up. The other thing was the bottom of the screen said, we have a new Patreon, blah, blah, blah. And it got cut off. It's just so people know, it's patreon.com/government secrets. It said government seek because it was just too long or something. So it's patreon.com/government secrets.
Good to know.
We're doing, for those who didn't know, we're doing an exclusive episode exclusive segment, 15 minutes or so, every week for everyone at the Patreon.
And the Patreon, everybody gets the bonus content regardless of dollar amount. It's just, you can get more merch stuff if you want to spend more money. But for $5 a month, so we did it last week for the first time, and we'll do it again today. We'll do the regular hour free Government Secrets that you're watching right now. And then as soon as the show's over, we'll jump on over to Patreon and do a bonus GovSeek seg. And
if you sign up at a higher tier, you can get the mug, and it actually comes with a human tooth you can put in the Coke to dissolve. So you dissolve the tooth, then you drink the Coke.
It's the tooth dissolved tier. It's an exciting tier.
We will, to $100 patrons will reveal where we get the human teeth.
That'll be our big secret, where we got the actual teeth.
Yeah.
You guys are gonna be you have no idea where we're getting these teeth.
We will say it came from they came from a CEO. We'll just leave it at that.
It's somebody who deserved it. We'll just put it that way. It's somebody. It's absolutely somebody who deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just in the teeth, you've got the mug tier, and we've got the, I think, t-shirt. You get a sticker. A lot of fun stuff over there at the patreon.com/government.
And we also have the tiers tier, where we send you some of our tiers that we've collected in a small envelope, as the most censored comedians in America.
Oh my God. Yeah, there's a lot of those tiers. There's a lot of those. I have a whole Ziploc bag of those tiers that you can get. Oh my God. It's like, you ever have those days, Lee, when like, and maybe it happened recently when they shut down our, just you think you're cranking along and this is great. Oh, everyone wants to hear what I have to say. And then you get censored or shut down and you just think, oh, I should have just been I should have just done, wacky home videos. Like I should have just been a comic that just talked about getting drunk or whatever. Like, have you had those days, Lee Camp?
Well, I will say this. My transformation into like a harsh political comic came before I'd had much success. I was successfully touring college campuses, so I was making a living. But in terms of success on television or anything, it came before most of that. So I never had that time where I was like successful on TV without being political. So yeah, of course I have the thoughts like, wow, it would have been so much easier if I just hadn't fucking decided to grab the third rail and just hug it. But I never had any success as a regular comedian.
Right. Oh God. I'm just like, I did the Late Show on CBS twice. I did like all this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. I was on it with Craig Kilborn. Yeah, when he left, I was my host agent. I was fighting my host agent. I was like, I was trying to get an audition to replace him. It was crazy. It was like, I wonder what my life would have been like if that would have happened. I'd just be fake laughing. I'd be just, interviewing some reality TV star, just going, well, at least I got a yacht. I don't know what I would be doing.
Have you ever chatted with, we're going way off the thread here, but have you ever chatted? I don't know if people tune in for the behind the scenes comedy, bitter comedians talk, but have you ever chatted with Paul Provenza?
I don't know him that well, but I've met him once or twice.
He was a bit of I haven't spoken to him in a while, but he was a bit of a mentor for me. But you guys have some similarities in that he also had a fair amount of success as a kind of standard comedian. Like he had a show on Comedy Central. Mm-hmm. He was he was one of the last two up for whichever one of the late night shows Conan O'Brien ultimately hosted. He ended up losing out to Conan O'Brien, but then he kind of was like, I'm sick of the bullshit, and became both a producer and a comedian who only really cares about comedy that's hitting on, either darker truths or real truths or getting somewhere deeper than just like standard, sure, milquetoast, middle America comedy. But yeah, he had that like successful middle road that I think he wasn't really enjoying. But.
I think for me, what happened for me really is it was 9/11. Watching what happened with 9/11, I really felt like I'm an idiot. I was like hosting strip poker and I was like, what am I doing? Like there's people out there, really sacrificing. And I started to become a Red Cross volunteer. And the number one thing that the American Red Cross responds to is single family fires, right? Most people don't know that. And that's the number one thing they respond to. And it's rarely on the news. There's no musicians singing songs for a fundraiser or anything like that. And I started going to, people's houses in the San Fernando Valley whose everything had been burned to the ground. And I'd show up with these other Red Cross and we'd set up a case file and give them immediate food and clothing and really seeing the first thing I ever responded to after I'd started doing all these Red Cross training classes was this apartment complex had burned down, and it was one of these apartment complexes where everybody kind of knew each other. It was like one of those tight knit apartment complexes. Yeah. And this 5-year-old kid died in the fire. And there was a thing at the firehouse that had responded for all of this, you know, the family members there. And there was like clergy, there was mental health. And I had thought about joining the fire department. And then there was the young firefighter that discovered the child. And we just showed up with this, the American Red Cross has these like, basically like food trucks, kind of not fully, but just like snacks. And they're usually to feed firefighters on a fire line or whatever, which I've done that plenty of times too. And that was the first thing I like officially showed up to as a new volunteer. And I saw the pain and the suffering in everybody's eyes. And I just saw the firefighter. And this was like, I was like, I had a hard time being like, am I really going to just keep hosting game shows? Like, I really was
right.
And then I started going into the war zones, and that's sort of, that's when I kind of, I don't know. And then I kind of came back and forth of like, well, I see the value of entertainment, because they were so like, thank you for coming over here and telling, and my act wasn't political at all when I was going to Afghanistan back then. And
right. So, yeah.
But I then saw the value of just sort of, you know, bubblegum entertainment, like you need to check out from when, you know, you need a reprieve or a break from serious stuff. So then I don't know. Then I did this other game show, and I don't know. I was sort of like very conflicted about, do I care about Hollywood at all? I remember and then we'll move on after this, but it might be important for our audience to kind of hear both of our origin stories, I guess. My host agent, and this is after I had done strip poker and cram, got me this audition. He goes, Graham, I got you an audition at E for, you know, I forget the name of that show, that Talk Soup or whatever, maybe that Greg Kinnear did and all these other people did.
Oh yeah, Talk Soup.
Yeah, and I was up to take on to replace one of those people or something like that. And he goes, I got to be honest with you, Graham, it was tough to get the audition over there. I said, why? He goes, this is what the woman said. She goes, we love Graham, but every time he comes over here, I don't feel like he's taking it seriously. And I started laughing. And I said, and at this point I'd done several Warzone tours, and I was like, you know what? The next time I'm entertaining, you know, soldiers in Iraq, I'll try to keep up with the Kardashians. And he just laughed and goes, Graham, come on, take it seriously. And I just was like, I couldn't take these auditions seriously. That's
the thing, is once you start seeing through all that bullshit, even if you're willing to still go out for them, you don't have that look in your eye like, oh, please, I love you people. Give me this job.
And can't do it.
Like I kept going on some of those auditions, the comedian Talking Heads on VH1 and stuff.
Yep.
that I never landed, but I'm sure they could see it in me. I was like, what do you guys fucking do? I didn't say this stuff, but you could see this guy doesn't really want to be at this job. He's just
at all. Yeah. He's literally going, well, he's literally in his head doing math, going, well, if I got this gig, I could pay this off and that off, and maybe I could finance my own film or whatever. That's what I did. I financed my own projects, none of which made money.
No, so the moment you see through Hollywood, you're kind of fucked.
You are. It is such a Matrix moment where you're just like, I can't go back. I can't. It's so hard.
Yeah, it's like the scene in Fight Club when Ed Norton has to go back and speak to his boss in the office. And he's got like cuts on his face. And he's like, am I really supposed to bow down to this guy? And say, oh, please, anything you want, sir. Like,
yeah. And then starts punching himself in the face.
Yeah. He's like, I swallowed another man's tooth the other day. I don't really care what this guy has to say.
Yeah. I willfully got my head kicked in. So I don't, nothing you can threaten me with nothing. Nothing. You're literally like, I'll use another word, the Joker in the Batman Dark Knight movies when Batman's like slamming him up in the interrogation room, and he goes, there's nothing you can threaten me with. And he's just laughing. There's nothing. That's what you're like after you've like seen behind the curtain as a comedian. Right. It's like, oh, you're going to take away cash cab, Miami. Like, oh.
Yep.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Government Secrets. Why we quit Hollywood comedy edition. Beep, beep.
So that being said, folks, so that we will not have to go back to auditioning to comment on what Kim Kardashian wore, please go to patreon.com/government secrets.
Please. Because right now, if I'm not auditioning for these things, but if anybody offered me, I might go, all right, fine. I'll do it. I'm trying to sell my Anything Can Happen game show because it's a political game show. It's something I believe in. I've created. I like that game show I could host and I could game show it up. I'd wear a shiny suit. I don't care. I'd get fake teeth. I don't care. But at least we're talking my kind of politics. Like,
right.
I get hair plugs. I don't give a shit. I would like, I don't care.
Chest hair plugs we need, Graham.
Well, actually, I'd take this hair and I'd fill it.
Put it on the top.
All right, Lee. Your segment first or mine's? I don't want to say mine's light, but
mine's going to be a bit longer.
All right. I'll do mine. I'll do mine and then we'll get into yours. I feel like yours is going to turn into a two-parter. That's my.
Oh man. Maybe.
All right. So I want to talk about, where is it? The 1964 Savage Mountain B-52 crash. Yeah. Another B-52 crash. So the Savage Mountain B-52 crash was a U.S. military nuclear accident in which a Cold War bomber's vertical stabilizer broke off in a winter storm turbulence. This again, I don't know. Lately, I've been on a kick of how inept our military is when it comes to like transporting nukes. Like,
right. You may have to. We've mentioned it a couple. You may have to do a longer segment on the dropping the nuke in North Carolina.
Yeah. Oh God. It's so. This happened. Well, first of all, so you might think that it happened on January 13th, 1964. And as it said, so again, there's so much to unpack here. See, the two nuclear bombs being ferried were found, quote, relatively intact in the middle of the wreckage.
Oh, Jesus.
You sleep well at night hearing stuff like that, right, Lee? That makes you just sleep like feeling you're safe. The people in charge.
Anytime I hear about nukes, I just hope the words relatively intact are somewhere in there.
I don't want to, when we're dealing with nukes, I don't really want or need 100% certainty. I like just sort of pretty deep, they're pretty safe.
It also sounds like some technical terminology. How the nukes doing? They're relatively intact. They're moderately okay.
It sounds like someone that like is married but secretly goes to orgies, and you ask them, how's your marriage doing? Relatively intact.
Yeah.
I'm just, cooking meth at an orgy, but other than that, my spouse doesn't know, but I feel relatively secure that if this information is not going to get out.
And the analogy still works because at any moment things may blow up spectacularly. There's literally kitten's whisker
where it could just boom.
Yep.
So after Fort Meade's 28th Ordnance Detachment secured the relatively intact nukes, the bombs were moved 2 days later to the Cumberland Municipal Airport. So, first of all, they're transporting nukes, but the other great secret here is it said that the vertical stabilizer broke off in a winter storm because of turbulence. Okay, well, you could make the argument, well, You know what, Lee? That's great. Who knew that was going to happen? Well, actually,
I hear planes never face turbulence, so it's really a freak accident.
Freak accident. And Lee, surely, if let's say the Air Force did a B-52 test in similar conditions that showed the vertical stabilizer could fail, surely the Air Force would release that information when they're transporting nukes. Don't you think?
Oh, of course. There's nothing the Air Force loves more than releasing information about
that's their motto. Like it's
about flight failures. That is, 95% of their funding goes let's just get it out there to the people, let them know a lot of fucking failures going on.
Yeah. You know, like how the Notre Dame guys play like a champion today before they run out. The Air Force has truth over consequences when they all tap it before they go. That's what they do. So
truth at all costs.
Truth at all costs. That's their motto. That's aim high is their second like phrase. Truth at all costs is number one. So, yes, Lee, on literally 3 days prior, January 10th, a New Mexico B-52 test showed the vertical stabilizer could fail. And the Air Force just said, well, let's just sit on this and see what happens. Let's not make an emergency thing of like, wait a minute. No. So, they let that happen. Of course, today the crash site is a private meadow of Elbow Mountain and the Savage River Forest, and I'm sure there's no remaining radioactive material. I'm sure it's fine.
There's one little plaque in the field where teenagers go to fuck, but
and they all come back with their hair falling out.
They all come back with new nipples.
With new nipples and green eyebrows. Quickly on the crew, as the only crew member who did not eject, the radar bombardier died in the crash and was not located until more than 24 hours afterward. The navigator and tail gunner died of exposure in the snow.
Exposure to the snow or exposure to radiation?
Yeah, it crashed in Pennsylvania, apparently. It was returning to Georgia from Massachusetts. But so theoretically, there was snow in January. I'm sure the radioactivity had nothing to do with it.
Can I ask a larger question, which relates to all of these segments you've been doing? Why do our nukes need to take little touristy vacations all around the nation all the time? Like, could we just leave them in one place at some point? Like, why is this thing traveling back across the country?
Well, Lee, I mean, you get bored. You don't want to be in the same place the whole time. You need to go out and stretch your legs. I mean, I think nukes need that too. We need to rotate the nukes around. We're always got to transport them.
You know, maybe the nukes want to see the biggest avocado in Carlsbad, California. Yeah.
You're trying to tell me a nuke can't at least just have one weekend in Vegas? Just one? They can't go to Vegas just once? And of course, we should transport them on planes with hundreds of gallons of fuel that can crash. I mean, again, Lee, we've covered this many times before. What's the worst that could happen?
That's the other motto they tap as they run out of the tunnel. What's the worst that could happen?
Truth at all costs. What's the worst that could happen? And then aim high. It's so yeah, the navigator's frozen body was found 2 days after the accident, 6 miles from the crash and 3 miles away.
And he got off easy.
Yes, because here's what these guys did. They ditched when the tail broke, they jumped. They got in parachute.
Except for one of them.
Right? One of them died. The radar bombardier, they're like, later, bro.
Yeah, one of them was like, I think we have a nuke on board. Shouldn't we deal with this? And the others were like, we're fucking out of here.
I'm out. I want to be outside the blast radius. Goodbye. And they just jumped. So the he was found 3, where his orange parachute was found high in a tree over Poplar Lake Run. Unable to disentangle his chute, he released the cocked fittings and fell over 30 feet through the tree, suffering injuries from the branches. His survival tent and other gear remained in the tree. He then attempted to find shelter and meandered, eventually falling down a steep slope in the dark into a river basin. After landing in the dye factory field, the tail gunner trekked in the dark with a broken leg and other injuries over 100 yards to the embankment known as Castleman River, in which his legs were frozen when his body was found 5 days later.
Jesus.
The pilot parachuted onto Maryland's Meadow Mountain Ridge and after being driven to the Thompson Inn, notified the United States Air Force of the crash. The co-pilot landed near... Yes, so 2 guys made it. And that is the Savage Mountain B-52 crash that, of course, people died, put regular American citizens' lives in danger, could have been prevented if they just would have released the test 3 days earlier in New Mexico. And there you go.
That, or if they didn't tore nukes around the country. A lot of ways to prevent this.
Stop the crazy out of control spending on nukes. There's that too.
Yep. Maybe we don't need, 6,000 nuclear weapons, which is enough to blow up the entire Earth something like 5-6 times over.
Yep.
I feel like blowing up the entire Earth once would be enough.
Well, you want to make a point. You know what I mean? You gotta.
What if you blow up the entire Earth and you're like, I feel like we haven't made our point.
I feel like everything is dead. We still got a couple nukes in the holster here. I think we need to, just so there's no. I mean, better safe than sorry, Lee. That's always my motto is when I'm destroying all life on a planet. So yeah, that's the government secret segment number 1. More missing nukes. Lee Camp, what is your government secret? For episode 84. I forgot to say this at the top of the episode, but it'll be in the label when people play it, so they'll know.
I'm just trusting you on the episode numbers nowadays. Just go with it.
You'd be very proud of me, Lee. I actually go back and look at the number of the previous one, and then I just add 1. It's really...
And it only took 80 episodes to figure that part out.
It takes a good year and a half in a podcast's life to really figure out how to count.
So I've been threatening to do this for a while, and I figured today's the day. A full episode on our man, Medley Butler.
Oh, that's our boy.
Full segment. Many of our listeners are familiar with Medley Butler. We've mentioned him before. Here's a little image of him that you can put up there. But and what they're probably most people are familiar with. Well, for one thing, he was one of the most decorated Marines to ever live, received 16 medals, 5 of them for heroism, was one of only 2 people or Marines ever to receive 2 of the highest level award. But then he changed later in his career, and his most famous book is War is a Racket. And I'm going to read perhaps his most famous quote, which a lot of people still circulate to this day. I think it's become even more popular nowadays than it probably was at the time to mention this quote. So let's see. That quote is, I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service, and during that period, I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of 6 Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1902 to 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for the American sugar interests in 1916. I helped make Honduras right for the American fruit companies in 1903. In China in 1927, I helped see to it that that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. Looking back on it, I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was to operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated on 3 continents. So that's his most famous quote. Incredibly important points being made there, obviously. But I want to get into more details of his life than just kind of the thing that people know nowadays. And the other fascinating thing is if you are a Marine currently, like even nowadays, you know his name and you know nothing of his activism that came later.
Oh yeah. That's again, to talk about a government secret. He is only taught in Marine Corps basic training, just his military accomplishments. That it's not like they're handing out war as a racket at, at Paris Island or whatever. That ain't happening, man. And it's one of those things that you and I, it's one of the reasons we started this show is because we both get so mad. I found out about Medley Butler about 6 years ago, maybe 7, maybe. Yeah. I was never taught this guy at all. His name, Eugene Debs, none of these guys. Carrot Top. Elaine Boozler. Never. Yeah. I wasn't taught anything.
Nothing about him.
No, but it's like, actually it's the joke is we know more about Elaine Boozler and Carrot Top and them than we do than Eugene Debs is. I mean, I had to learn about, I'm suddenly blanking on the name. We've talked about him on the show, the Black Panther activist that was killed in Chicago.
D.L. Hughley. Oh.
Yeah, DL's been known for his activism. Yeah, they just did a movie on him. I've said his name 1,000 times.
Now you've got me like
Fred Hampton.
Fred Hampton, yeah.
But like I first heard about Fred Hampton like 4 years ago from Chris Hedges, and I was like, "What?" Like it just makes me so mad that these people are deliberately not taught in history classes in America. Yep. Deliberately.
Yep.
So that's why if you are a teacher, this podcast is the most important podcast you should give your students.
Oh my God. I feel like for like middle and high school history teachers out there, either our show would just be incredibly useful to them if they're willing to touch on these things, or it would destroy their lives, but one or the other.
Yeah. Like you have to secretly, you can't just like officially assign this podcast. You have to just be like, all right, guys, have a great summer break. Government Secrets Podcast. And then have fun, everybody.
You guys have been a pleasure to teach. Look up Fred Hampton. See you later. Yeah.
You got to find the like one kid in the class that's like the big sort of organizer for stuff and just go, you might want to check this out and share it with your friends on social media and just like walk away. And then that's how it goes.
You know how you organized all the kids to protest so that now the school has to allow you to suck on ring pops in class? I think you might be the right kind of person to learn about the organizing history of America.
Yeah. Oh, God. This is all the people you will not be taught in school in America.
Or taught completely backwards. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, or you just taught half of it.
Like MLK, it's been a 4 or 5 decades long effort to sanitize his image, to still make it something that can be celebrated, but basically make it a pro-capitalist. He just stood for civil rights and that's it, like image.
Yeah. They've completely scrubbed any of his socialist speeches, any of his anti-war speeches. They've completely scrubbed it.
Or the number of times he was arrested.
Yeah. They've scrubbed all of it.
Okay, so let's get into a little more of Medley Butler's life. Medley Butler was born in prosperous. Oh, by the way, this is from the outlet's called the Ta'i, and it's by Crawford Killian. Medley Butler was born into a prosperous Philadelphia Quaker family. His father was a congressman. When the Spanish-American War broke out in 1898, Butler was only 16, but he managed to get himself into the U.S. Marines. He went to the Philippines, eventually, where the Filipinos were resisting their new masters. He fought in China as part of an international force to suppress the Boxer Rebellion. In Latin America, he was in the U.S. invasion of Veracruz during the Mexican Revolution, guarded Panama during the digging of the canal, in which case the U.S. had basically broken that piece of Panama off in order to allow our canal to be built there, and eventually invaded most of the nations of Central America, as well as Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And this was in just the first 20 years of his 30-some as a Marine. And during all of this, and he became a leader, obviously, of the Marines. And during all of this, he was proudly racist, basically, spouting racist American policies. Chinese, Filipinos, Central Americans, and Caribbean islanders were ipso facto inferior peoples, useful as cheap labor or not at all. And that, yeah, I mean, that's, and I think we've focused on it plenty of times, but that's part of what these American policies are. They're innately racist. They're by definition racist. It's not just like America picked the wrong side in this battle. No, it's like America viewed these people as subhuman, and that's why we could do this to them.
I mean, it's playing out today. I mean, we've talked about it like, oh my God, there's blonde-haired, blue-eyed refugees coming out of Ukraine. We got to stop everything and help them. We don't care about the brown skin refugees that we've created in the Middle East. Like it's still happening today. And it's really at the root of it, you're right, is this very white supremacist colonialism that is like, we're superior to these people. And so we're going to go do whatever we want. Oh, they're savages. I mean, they live like animals and we're so much more sophisticated. I mean, all of it. I mean, I mean, there's a theme through everything we've covered on this show over the last 84 episodes now. I mean, the stuff we've talked about when we did those episodes about Christopher Columbus. I mean, back in the 1400s, his own diary was, oh, these brown people are dumb and I can subjugate them and take their land and do whatever the hell I want. I can kill and rape them. Who cares? And it's Medley Butler in his early military career was just a continuation of that. 400 years later, he was doing the same thing.
Yeah. And for a long time, I mean, I don't know how it was in his earlier days, but for a long time, it wasn't even, like you're saying with Columbus, it wasn't even something they thought needed hiding. It was,
it was taught. It was like, it was part of the doctrine. And I'm sure it was in the doctrine. So he joined the Marines in the late 1800s. So you're talking about, this was just taught, like, I'm sure it was in like, this is why we're superior to them. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't some like, ooh, don't say that out loud. You could just flat out say, well, we're superior to them. They're savages. Look at the way they conduct themselves. Like.
Yeah. So American investors in each of these countries that he's being sent to as a Marine, they basically expected the Marines to protect their investments. And they did. American banks almost worked from a script. I feel like of this entire article, I feel like this is one of the most important parts. American banks were working from a script throughout this time. Lend money to a government, wait until it has trouble repaying it, as it inevitably will, then send in the Marines to oust the government and find a puppet president who will rob his country to pay the banks or will allow the U.S. to rob his country.
This is exactly how the mob works. Have you watched Goodfellas, where the club owner in Goodfellas is like, oh, I'm having money. And that's their whole purpose, is to take over the club. The guy can't pay it anymore. Then they set the club on fire and they collect the insurance money. That's in Goodfellas. This is what only the government. And it's funny. You see all these mob movies where the mobsters are always like, oh, I mean, even like Goodfellas or Godfather 2, he's like, Senator, don't pretend we're you're of a different hypocrisy. We're in the same hypocrisy. Give me a break. Like, the U.S. government is the biggest mob on the planet and has been for a while.
I was talking about this the other day on my live stream. I was like, people act like, oh, we stopped the mob, we stopped the mafia, they rooted them out and they ended most of it. It's like, no, they got rid of their competition. That's what they fucking did. Yes. They got rid of their competition.
The mob was their competition. They were like, no. So we're going to legalize casinos everywhere. We're going to
like. Right. So Butler's forays in Central America were viewed as rollicking adventures for young Marines, young American men roaming Nicaragua and Honduras with guns and having a great old time. And basically there were no laws they could do whatever the fuck they wanted. Maybe occasionally the military would be like, hey, don't rape so many people.
Right.
But, well, listen, we're capping the rapes. It's just too many at this point. Like, may occasionally, but for the most part, there were no laws. They could do whatever the fuck they wanted.
And so let's be real clear here too. So there's this history of soldiers in general, but American soldiers doing this. We did this in post war Japan. We American soldiers, when we occupy after they surrendered, there's all these reports of men just raping the soldiers, U.S. soldiers raping the shit out of Japanese women. We did it throughout Europe after World War II. I mean, we've been doing this and it's still happening. So it's like, to mention
when you view a people as subhuman, it just, anything can be done.
Yes.
There's no line that you'd think, well, they still view that as immoral, even if they believe the U.S. propaganda. It's like, no, they don't. They were taught to not believe these people are human.
Yeah, they're taught that in basic training, and then then you've got young men who've just been killing a bunch of people. So if they had any sort of moral bound, it's like, well, I've been killing all of these people, so what? I don't know what they're thinking, but I'm sure some of them are just like, well, even it doesn't matter, or I'm fighting for good, or shit, I'm going to hell anyway. I might as well keep being evil. I don't know what, but it's just like, this keeps happening.
Yeah.
And it also should be noted too, that most female service members in the United States, the overwhelming number of them have been victims of sexual assault. Overwhelming. If you're a woman in the U.S. military, it's insane. It's insane.
I mean, it is such a brutal patriarchal system that it's not a surprise that you're going to end up with a ridiculous number of sexual assaults.
And it just feeds the capitalist. I mean, capitalism just is kind of born out of, colonialism, basically, because all the colonialists and imperialists was all for money and power and land and whatever else. And it's the same thing. They're doing the same thing now. It's only now, instead of for like, whatever, some king in Europe or whatever, now you're doing it for Raytheon. Now you're doing it for Boeing,
Yeah. But this is when Medley Butler starts to have a bit of an awakening, but not the full awakening, which I think this happened for soldiers who ultimately realize the harm of our wars. It often starts with realizing that their fellow soldiers are being treated like shit. Like, that's where it starts, is like, wait, why are they throwing us in to die or to get harmed? Or why did my best friend get killed in Iraq? Why were we there? It's those questions that kind of start a journey. And so Butler saw a problem with these occupations. His Marines were too few to police all of America's new colonies and client states. He began to think of how to recruit local toughs. So at first, he's not thinking what they're doing is wrong. He just doesn't think there's enough Marines to do it. So he started recruiting local toughs and to train them as National Guards. When he got chances to implement his idea, he launched the careers of many dictators, from the Somosas of Nicaragua to Trujillo in Dominican Republic and the Duvaliers, I suppose, of Haiti. As Roosevelt said of Somoza, he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. And then Butler in Haiti becomes essentially the de facto ruler of Haiti for a bit, because it's a Marine occupation. He's the top Marine. He's basically ruling Haiti. And he established the detested, while he's there, he established the detested practice of corvée, which is obliging Haitians to pay a tax or do unpaid labor instead. Either you pay this tax or you do unpaid labor. However, they were incredibly poor then, as many of them are now. And so many of them did the unpaid labor because they were like, well, I can't pay the tax. So in the world's first Black Republic and first slave rebellion created state, had fought a great revolution to free itself. This was pretty close to a return to slavery. Nonetheless, it continued for years. He also invented what we now know as counterinsurgency, trying to various techniques to stop and kill and otherwise stop insurgencies in countries. Butler made friends with villagers in rebel-held areas, treating them well and exploiting their conflicts with rebels. It worked well enough in Haiti to end the armed resistance, but less well in later American wars like Vietnam and Afghanistan. Probably his worst act, this is pretty mind-blowing, his worst act in Haiti was to walk into the Haitian parliament with some of his men and simply shut it down at gunpoint. It would not meet again for years, and Haiti's continued political instability can be traced largely to that incident. You have U.S. Marines walking into an elected body and saying, you're not meeting, we have guns, and they don't meet again for years.
And it's like so many of these countries who are in third world poverty conditions, destabilized governments, you can trace it back to us, the United States, doing this with an instance like this. I mean, like it's, and we're the biggest hypocritical liars ever. We're all about freedom, and we love telling the story of how we fought King George and got our own autonomy, and then go to countries literally all over the world and say, no, you don't have autonomy.
And we love democracy. We love democracy.
No, we love democracy, but not for you.
We love democracy. Now I have a gun. Shut down your parliament.
Yeah, shut down your democracy. Your democracy is bullshit because it's costing us money. So your democracy we don't like. Yep. And then when there's all these refugees from these countries that we've completely destabilized through any number of ways, then we're mad at the refugees. We're mad at the poor people in a boat that just trying to find a better life. Nobody wants to flee their homeland. Nobody wants to flee their homeland unless it's so miserable that you're like, I got to get out of here.
Like the images of the Border Patrol on horseback whipping the Haitians.
Yes.
Last year.
Yes.
And that's largely due to the American empire and what we've done to Haiti. And yet you have all these television channels, Fox News and everything acting like, well, this is just dirty Haitians trying to get in our country.
Right. They want to come. And when you start asking them questions, well, why is their country poor and destabilized? Oh, they didn't work hard enough. Or what? What are you talking about? And again, we're deliberately propagandized as Americans to not be taught this stuff.
Yeah. So when the U.S. entered the First World War, Butler was bitterly disappointed to be left in charge of Haiti. Basically, he wanted to be on the big stage. After 20 years of beating up small countries, he wanted to test himself against a European enemy. But he didn't get to Europe until the closing days of the war and found himself in charge of a camp in France for servicemen returning to the U.S. But that meant that he basically had to mostly deal with injured U.S. soldiers. So he became an advocate of injured and retired soldiers, pestering the higher-ups to provide better care for returning veterans. So again, you see this continued change where he now is like, wow, we're being treated like cannon fodder. And we're the heroes that these people are sending into the front lines, in to face the fucking bombs and the bullets. He had always understood that his Latin American adventures had been to benefit investors and banks. Now he began to wonder about the motives behind wars between empires. By the late 1920s, Butler was back from another hitch in China. This one spent watching Japanese encroachment and clashes between nationalists and communists and protecting property in Tianjin owned by Standard Oil. I mean, and this is shit I didn't know. Right. And I don't consider myself a history expert either, but I didn't know, like, even that early in the 1920s, we had Marines protecting oil interests in China. Like,
it's funny because it's like, and you and I have talked about this before, like even for folks such as ourselves who sort of started to wake up, there's even these layers of like knowledge and waking up. You think, America was pretty honorable. It was like after World War II is when things got nope. We've been corrupt and money in war for profit. I mean, going back to the 1800s, like he said, and then again in 1920s, we're protecting oil interests in China. Like it's the whole America is a filthy lie, as you put it so succinctly. It's Santa Claus butt fucking the Easter Bunny in your backyard drunk. That's what America is. It's what it will always be. And I never want any American to have that image out of your head. You need to always have that image in your head.
And the average American is the children that you're like, kid, don't look at that, kids. It's the Easter Bunny, Santa. They're fine. They're good. Just look over here, kids.
We're pals. And just like the Easter Bunny looks like Daddy. No, it doesn't. This is everything's fine. You're fine. Here's a Tonka truck. There we go.
The reindeer on break, and Santa's going to ride the Easter Bunny to the North Pole. That's what's happening.
Just think of the Easter Bunny like Rudolph. Only his nose is red because he's a drunk.
So then, and here's an interesting aspect. Medley Butler became more of an outspoken critic because of economic force. He ended up in some financial trouble as the Depression hit, and Butler found he could make money as a public speaker. So to 700 guests at a Pittsburgh banquet, he described how he'd kept a Nicaraguan president in office by declaring opposition candidates to be bandits. Then he followed up with a story about dissolving the Haitian National Assembly at gunpoint. The audience loved it, but author Sinclair Lewis turned it into a national scandal because such outrages were still going on. And so the audience loved it, but then once it was in the national newspapers, I imagine he got some not so happy phone calls from the ruling elite, from the oligarchy.
Yeah. He got some phone calls. Somebody was like, "Hey, Smed, you and I need to go meet for drinks a little later. We're gonna have a little talk here, and it's gonna be."
It was even though it was 1930, a black car pulled up and handed him a cell phone and said, "Take this."
This hasn't been invented yet, as far as you know. But I need you to answer.
As far as you know, this does not exist. But answer this now.
Oh man. So the Depression had hit 1930. Yeah. And then we're going to, all right. I think I know what's coming next in the Butler story, but yeah.
Yep. Butler's career was dead in the water after that speech, but another speech ended any chance of a return to his career as a decorated Marine. He described in another speech how Mussolini, driving a friend of Butler's through northern Italy, had run over and killed a child. Mussolini had dismissed the accident, saying, quote, it's only one life. And this is before World War II, so I guess the U.S. government was still on some kind of good terms with Italy. But that speech got Butler a court-martial, which was eventually dropped. He then retired and began a new career as a critic of U.S. policy. So they tried to lock him up for revealing that Mussolini had run over a kid.
You really shouldn't, when someone's a dictator, but they're friends with the U.S., we got to let them slide. You can run over kids if you're friends with the U.S. I mean, literally, and it's weird. It's like, as we do with all these stories, it's like, it's still happening today. I mean, we just sent more troops back to Somalia because they have a lot of oil reserves in Somalia. And I'm sure they've got lithium or whatever, whatever mineral for cell phones there too, or whatever. And it's just like,
if a dictator is friends with the U.S., you don't want to reveal truths about them.
No.
And in fact, in order to discuss that topic, we have a special guest, journalist Jamal Khashoggi is here with us. Oh, no.
Ooh,
sorry.
Wait a minute.
Never mind. Nope.
we're going to wring our hands over that for about 48 hours on a news cycle and then never talk about it again. And then keep selling Saudi weapons, and they keep giving us oil.
Yeah. And also the petrodollar wouldn't exist without Saudi Arabia. So they literally have us over a barrel, literally. So Butler was approached a few years later by people who wanted him to lead another veterans march on Washington for the purpose of ousting Roosevelt and installing a new Secretary of General Affairs as a dictator. And you and I have mentioned this before, but it wasn't just a march on Washington. They wanted him to storm the White House and take the president, pull the president out and I guess arrest him at gunpoint.
Do what he did in Haiti. That's what they wanted him to do. Yeah. Just do it. Do it on the Capitol building.
Do it in America. Yeah. But yeah, the bankers behind the scheme, he was told, were torn between Butler and a more authoritarian General Douglas MacArthur. But they ultimately chose Butler. It would later be known as the business plot, which, like I said, we covered on a past episode. Butler blew the whistle and testified before the new House Un-American Activities Committee, which later would focus only on communists. But nothing happened. People laughed it off. So think about this. The House Un-American Committee that we all now know as the committee that was destroying people's lives for maybe possibly believing in the communist system was told businessmen, business elite, came to the top military generals America's ever known and said, march into the White House and take the president out by gunpoint and put in a dictator. And they didn't care. They didn't do shit about it.
And he did there's a video of Medley Butler talking about this. That's on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube where he says, these guys came to me. And it was a movie tone thing back then. And he said, they came to me to stage a coup. And everyone was like, coup schmoo. And like, yeah, it was to stage a coup. These bankers, these Wall Street guys asked a general to stage a coup. And everyone was like, well, that's the cost of doing business. People say crazy stuff at parties,
Titans of industry they're gonna be crazy. That's what they do. They do weird shit, right?
Do you think MacArthur was like, oh man, I would have loved that gig?
I imagine he probably said, it was the role I was born to play.
I think Douglas MacArthur would have been he was too egomaniac, power hungry to turn down that gig. He was like, why didn't they ask me? I would have said yes. I wouldn't have called them out.
Yeah. Then he jacked off into the American flag. And
with a blow-up sex doll that looks like the Statue of Liberty.
In his last years, Butler published a booklet, War is a Racket, in which he saw bankers and industrialists as the racketeers, in which he saw. In an article for a socialist magazine, he described his career as a high-class muscle man. I read that quote at the beginning, for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer for capitalism. So that concludes the Medley Butler story. And as we mentioned, his legacy is among activists who know his story. He's viewed as this great resource of like saying, look, even one of the highest level generals America has ever seen says this of the American empire. And among Marines, he's just known as the most decorated Marine ever.
That's it. It's so crazy. And that's why what he said is so powerful. And that's which because you see how powerful it is that a guy that did it, that started out believing in it and participated in probably some horrible acts. I mean, he's probably done awful stuff, to then say this is wrong. You see how powerful that is, because who can argue with this guy? What are you going to say? This guy's not a patriot? You're going to say he hates America?
Right.
No. And that's why he's so dangerous. And that's why we can't talk about his book. We can't talk about the coup. That's why the coup is just talked about like some wacky hijinks at a party. Like, it's not like this really severe act that happened. And everything he talked about, we've seen it all play out. We've seen it play out in the Cold War. We've seen the creation of the CIA. We've seen the Korean War, the Vietnam War.
So you have Eisenhower speaking out against the military-industrial complex, all come true, even despite his warnings. And we the much kind of buried Truman Washington Post op-ed saying the CIA had run amok. This is a month after JFK is killed, and that warning ignored as well.
Yeah, and all the stuff we've covered, all of JFK's anti-war, get us out of Vietnam and scatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces, all of that stuff, Medley Butler was the precursor warning to all of this stuff that's happening. And now here we are, you know, we just sent $40 billion to the Ukraine. Not one Democrat voted against it. Another 40 billion. And not one Democrat voted against it. 11 Republicans voted against it, which I don't buy. I believe that was largely performative. They knew it was going to pass just so they could say I'm against whatever.
Well, and similar to Trump trying to create peace with North Korea, it's the right thing for the wrong reasons. There are right-wingers who are like Rand Paul, who are anti our military excursions around the world. And if you talk to them about that topic, I and they would agree 100%, but it's for the wrong reasons. I mean, these are still racist, horrible people,
right?
But how fucked up is it that you find 11 people on the right wing that are willing to stand up against the military-industrial complex and no one on the Democrats who are not left-wing? They're just fucking right-wing, but
yeah, they're just Goldman Sachs with a rainbow flag is what the Democratic Party is.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's all of this stuff is playing out literally right now in real time today with Somalia, with the Ukraine. And I mean, on top of this, the reasoning for why a lot of military guys become whistleblowers is they see the injustice of it all. I mean, Mike Preisner is an example of that. And then you've got, you know, the 22 vets.
Matthew Ho is a great example. He's running for office right now.
Yeah, Matthew Ho. What's it, Danny Sweargin or Surgeon or whatever that guy's, I forget his name. He wrote a lot for Truth Dig. You've got 22 vets a day committing suicide. You're seeing the treatment of veterans is completely atrocious. So we send them to go do these wars for these big corporations, and they come back and we don't care. And we give them a thank you for your service, but you know, in a military discount at Denny's or whatever, but we don't care that they're suffering from PTSD and traumatic brain injury and their bodies are broken. And we don't care. We don't care about that at all because the Raytheon stock went up. I mean, General Austin, the Secretary of Defense, was on Raytheon's board of directors, but all anybody talked about was first black man Secretary of Defense. So it's even more sophisticated. What's even more painful or to watch, it's even more sophisticated, the propaganda and the gaslighting and the lying.
Yeah. And my father, who spent 20 years in the military as a doctor, wrote a book titled U.S. Army Psychiatry in the Vietnam War. And it reveals how fucked up the troops were, the U.S. troops in Vietnam, how many were addicted to drugs. And they were addicted to drugs because they didn't want to be there. And they took the drugs to try and make themselves okay with doing something so remarkably fucked up. And yeah, it's one of the few books written by a military veteran doctor who can say with authority, here's how horribly the U.S. troops were treated and how horribly they were, how horrible the situation was in Vietnam. And the U.S. government, although they technically funded the production of the book, has done nothing to promote it or get it out there or anything. They basically have essentially buried it.
Yep. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Government secrets. Dashing any hopes you have that America's a good place.
But we want to keep this episode going at patreon.com/government secrets. And one of the government secrets we were discussing over there has to do with Vietnam and one of the battles that was fought there.
Ooh.
So patreon.com/government secrets. We do an extra 15-minute segment every week. And you can also get a mug, a t-shirt, those things as well. But we prefer that you come for the contents.
Come for the content.
If you got to come for the mug, I understand.
And also, the audio podcast, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you get that first. Like, we release the audio podcast for free, usually on Mondays. This week it got released a lot later because our editor's gone and I'm busy and I try to do it. But more it gets released a couple days.
And there were further dishwasher issues. I don't really want to go into them right now, but the Graham dishwasher saga continues. So
there was a dishwasher saga. The ghost of my Nissan Leaf came back to visit me in the middle of the night. But yeah, so you get the audio podcast before anybody else does if you're a Patreon subscriber. So hit the like button, like and share this on whatever platform you're watching. And we're going to go over there. I've got tour dates coming up. If you go to GrahamElwood.com, if you're in the beautiful island of Oahu, I'm headlining this all new comedy club called Stand Up Honolulu, a Memorial Day weekend, May 26th through the 29th. Ron Placone and I are in the Pacific Northwest in July. July 28th, we're in Portland. July 29th, we're in Seattle. And July 30th, we're in Vancouver, Washington. And more tour dates will be announced. Lee Camp, what are you doing?
Nothing. No, I mean, I got nothing live going on, but I got plenty online. I'd love for everybody to check out. You can just type in leecamp.net. It'll take you to my locals page, which is a community I have going on over there that it's been great so far. You can get all my stuff there. But if that's not your thing, I'm also at rumble.com/leecamp. And as long as they will not delete me, youtube.com/momentofclarity.
Yes, I'm still demonetized on YouTube, so any way you can help out. All right, guys, we're going to be go to patreon.com/government secrets. We will have the members live stream up in just a couple of minutes. All right, thank you. Thank you for watching and listening to Government Secrets, episode 84. Go to patreon.com.